And the reason why this is so important is because our vote is our consent. Our vote is our voice. Our vote determines a lot of things that we do in a nation, and it's fundamental to a free society that our voices are heard. And there are many issues that we vote on, not just represent people who are going to represent us, but there's a lot of issues. There's referendums, there's all kinds of things. And it's very, very important that we are heard. And voting is the people speaking. So that's why it's so important that our election process from start to finish is transparent and operates effectively, and that there's no room for interference or manipulation. And that's what this meeting's all about, is how we can better improve our election process. So I would like to start this meeting by exercising our First Amendment rights with a word of prayer. And since I forgot to invite someone to pray, I'll just go ahead and lead us in prayer, and then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance after that. So thank you, Brian, for bringing the flag with you. So Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this gathering together, Lord. We want to thank you for our great state of Alaska. We want to thank you for the freedoms, Lord, that you've given us, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Lord, our Declaration of Independence, our founding documents, Lord God, that's built this nation into one of the greatest nations on the face of the earth, Lord. And Father, we recognize that your hand and your grace is upon the United States of America and upon Alaska, Lord. We are truly blessed with an abundance, Lord, and we are truly privileged to raise our families and to live in this great state, Lord God. And it is our duty, Lord, to guard and to protect and watch out and love and serve and be involved with each other, Lord, and to help this state to be one of the greatest places on earth to live. So we thank you for this meeting. We pray for all the technical functions to operate properly, Lord, and each speaker, I am so grateful that they're here, and we just thank you for them. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I would like to welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Kevin Myers, joining us today. Thank you for being here. Also, this meeting is being recorded for future use. So hopefully, if for those people that aren't able to view it tonight, they can view it later, because I think there's a lot of important information that we're going to be learning about here. So our first participant is Joe Miller. Joe is just an incredible person. He's run for office in the state several times. If anybody knows about voter integrity, it's Joe. I think he's encountered just about everything you can encounter in an election. I have the deepest respect for him. I would also like everybody to know that he has a news website, Restoring Liberty, that's invaluable, and I just encourage everybody to subscribe to that. He gives us information pertinent to Alaska, but also events and everything that happen throughout the country. He searches the news and presents it so we don't have to. And that's what I like about that. So Joe, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, John, for the introduction. I'm just going to take about 15 minutes and kind of give a bit of an overview. But first, I wanted to thank AKRA for putting this on. AKRA was started, I think, back in 2014 as an answer basically to the establishment, however you want to define it. They've done a fantastic job in raising and keeping to the 4 issues that are important to Alaska. And vote integrity, of course, is one of the top, if not the top issue for the state from my perspective. Just kind of from a historical perspective, I think it's important to kind of talk about why we're here with vote integrity. Kind of from a national view, of course, President Trump has kept to the 4 issues of vote integrity, keeping pressure on voter ID and other matters that have been raised before at the national level because of the concerns about dead people voting, illegal aliens voting, and the like. And, you know, even before my involvement in statewide politics, I ran for state legislature back in 2004, but I was kind of tangentially aware of these issues. I knew that, you know, there would always be bad people out there that try to perpetuate power by, you know, circumventing the will of the people. I mean, it's a historical fact. It's happened all over the world. It's happened for generations. You can look back in American history, and vote fraud is a fixture. You can remember, of course, a number of the historic races where vote fraud has arisen, and Alaska, regrettably, is not immune. Now, I wasn't aware of the issues institutionally that we had in Alaska until the 2010 race, and this is not a sour grapes presentation. I'm just objectively presenting what we saw, and a number of these points that I'm going to bring up are available. Matt Johnson, who I think is on this call, wrote an excellent book on the race in 2010 and dedicated about 3 chapters to the vote issues that were experienced in 10. But one of the things that we saw from a fairly early stage was interest in manipulating voting. This was just circumstantial. In the primary, when we had a very close return in 10, and a number of you on this call were actually part of that. He actually had some operatives come in from DC that engaged the Division of Elections. In fact, several of them were caught doing things in violation of regulations. And we later, I didn't really think much of it at the time. I figured, hey, you know, we've got vote integrity in Alaska. They're going to count the ballots as they fall. Really, I wasn't terribly concerned, but John Fund actually commented several months later after the general election that he felt that the Republican Party operatives were trying to steal the election. Now, that was all circumstantial, and I don't really want to get into the circumstantial stuff today. I just want to talk about what we objectively know. What we objectively know is this. At the conclusion of the race, well, let's start first with the returns that occurred in 2010, because what we saw with the returns in 2010, it was replicated again in 14 and also in 16. A number of you probably watch elections outside of the state. And one of the hallmarks of watching elections as returns come in any electronic system, not just with AccuVote machines, but any jurisdiction that uses electronic machines, you get these real-time reports when votes are returned. And I'll just give you one example. I watched the Roy Moore vote a couple of years ago come in. And, you know, Alabama, it's a diverse state, politically, probably, I hesitate to get empirical on this, but it's probably comparable to the state of Alaska. I mean, the state of Alaska has some fairly disparate voting patterns amongst people, right? Same way in Alabama. Well, in Alabama, as the vote came in, you saw swings of almost 30 points in voting from the start of the returns to the conclusion. Alaska, it's kind of interesting because in all 3 elections that I participated in a statewide election, there wasn't variance beyond about a point, 1 point. Now, the thing that's kind of extraordinary about that is that held true even when precincts were coming in from the Bush, which arguably had a very significantly different approach to my candidacy than some of the other areas, say the Valley, for example, or maybe some areas of Fairbanks. And that kind of interested a number of us observing those returns. we paid more attention to it in 14 and then again in 16, and the same thing replayed. And we still have yet to get a good explanation how in a disparate state like Alaska, where you have disparate demographics, disparate political groups in different geographic areas of the state, when you have those returns come in, why there aren't wider swings than 1 point. But again, circumstantial, granted. It's not direct evidence of any type of manipulation, not direct evidence of an institutional problem. But what was interesting in 10 was that we ended up getting our hands on ballots that have been cast, and that is because of the write-in vote. And had it not been for the write-in vote in 2010, nobody ever would have known about these issues because nobody would have had access to the ballots. Nobody would have been looking at the ballots as closely as we did at the statewide level. I don't think ever in the history of the state there's ever been an election where as many non-interested eyes were looking at the ballots as in 2010. And what we saw was very disturbing. And I'm not going to go through all the details. A number of sworn affidavits were provided by individuals that saw these things. They were provided to a number of political leaders. The governor's office, the current governor, has them. They were provided to his Department of Administration. But these affidavits said much of the following. One, ballots across different precincts had the same handwriting on them. In other words, the ballots were accessed. They had to have been accessed prior to the election because you had the same signature on each ballot or on many ballots. And we're talking about not just several, we're talking about hundreds of ballots across several precincts that were hundreds of miles away. Now, the only way that you can have the same handwriting on ballots across precincts is if there was access to those ballots prior to vote. And what does that suggest? Well, that's a vote security issue, isn't it? Other issues, of course, that we saw with private security groups handling the ballots after the race, and in fact, during the recount, continuing to handle those ballots. Again, a major red flag, especially in that case where the security agency that was involved was actually part of one of the corporate interests that was a player in the race. Again, a side issue, but the main issue is lacking of vote security. So we started to dig in this after the race to find out, what needs to change. It's kind of curious. The Alaska legislature decided to have hearings after 2010. And as far as I know, not one individual from my campaign, staff, volunteer or otherwise, was called upon to testify or to give information to the legislature when they held hearings. Really complete malfeasance, I might add. I mean, it was just inexcusable. But had they talked to us, what they would have realized is, one, we did have pretty good evidence. There was no vote security. And part of the problem is that the ballots, when they actually go to a precinct, far more ballots are provided than voters. The reason why is you got more registered voters in each precinct than people who cast votes. Normally you're looking at anywhere from 45 to 55% of the people that vote. And so you've got an excess of ballots, not to mention, of course, the dead people that are still on the rolls. So you got a lot more ballots in each precinct than get cast. So at the end of the day, when the vote is over, you got a pile of ballots more than what were actually cast, that if you don't have honest people at the precinct level, those ballots can be accessed, and they might be accessed even prior to the vote. The box may be stuffed. We had an affidavit from a professional in Anchorage in 2010, who I believe was the seventh voter in line. They had a jam in the Diebold AccuVote machine. They opened the machine, and the box was full of several inches of ballots already. And again, this gets to this whole ballot security issue, the accountability issue. Now, if it happens after the fact, which is less likely because there is a return that's provided electronically as the votes are done, you still have the issue of what do you do with these excess ballots at the end of the day? And right now, the only thing that's required is a certification of the people at the precinct level that they got rid of or destroyed the ballots. Again, kind of another significant weak link. The Diebold machines themselves, and Brian's probably going to talk a little bit about this, and I know that the Division of Elections has apparently gotten several new machines. I believe they're still made by Diebold. Haven't looked into those directly, maybe Brian has. But the Diebold machine itself has a long history of fraud-related concerns to the extent that the old models that we've been using in the state have been actually banned in a number of different states. The short of it is this. So I just given you several examples, and I don't want to burn all of tonight's time. I think, John, you recommended 15 minutes. But the short of it is this, that we have to have confidence in the voting system in Alaska. And we don't have it. In fact, I mean, there are a lot of people in the state that no longer even participate voting because they're convinced their vote doesn't count. Now, some people in the establishment are probably pretty thrilled by that. Makes it a little easier for them to perpetuate the system and keep their power. But it's very destabilizing to a political system to have significant components of the electorate not be convinced that the system has integrity. And there is a simple fix. Now, you know, the administration or whoever makes the decision can throw up smoke and say, hey, we're addressing it because we got new machines, or we're doing this investigation here, and oh, we're prosecuting this legislator here. The reality is it doesn't get to the institutional problems. It doesn't get to the base of it. The way to restore confidence is to ensure that there is the right to have access to a paper ballot and to count those paper ballots by hand. That is a certain solution. Right now, a lot of people think, oh, I vote on a paper ballot, therefore we've got a paper trail. Not true. As we found out in 2010, when those ballots get counted, unless you're a write-in vote, they're getting fed back through the machine. There's not a hand count that's being conducted of those paper ballots. So it's still an electronic vote. In reality, what we currently have is electronic voting, even though we've got kind of the surface view that it's paper voting. And so there are enough people that were involved in that process, and there are enough concerns that have been raised in Alaska that it really has destabilized, from my perspective, confidence in the system. And that's one of the reasons why I've continued to push this pretty hard. I know Matt's been involved in his writing, AKRA is involved in it. And it's also one of the reasons why I secured from the governor, before I supported him for his election this time, a commitment that he would seriously address this issue. Right now, I have not seen substantive action in that direction. Yes, there's been an investigation. Yes, Gabriel Ledoux is being prosecuted. Yes, a few machines have been bought. And I'm happy to see the lieutenant governor is on this call. I'm sure he's going to be willing to address steps that have been taken. But it gets back to the base point. If you want to restore integrity to the election system, if you aren't here to perpetuate the establishment, you will assure vote counts by paper ballots at the precinct level. Confirmation, it used to be done all the time in the state. That's how the ballots used to be counted. It can be done at the precinct level. Hey, you can still go ahead and do your electronic return. That's fine. That won't be the official number, but you can have it so that you get some results back that night. The official number gets confirmed at the precinct level. And the people that are involved in that process are obviously the folk that represent the candidates, the parties, and the election officials. So you've got representatives from different political perspectives, and there's confirmation. Not all precincts are going to have that, just due to the makeup of the state. But that approach at least would provide some guarantee that I think people in the state are looking for, to assure themselves that there is vote integrity. And that's what I would encourage legislators that are on this line to push for, the lieutenant governor to as the head of division elections, to push for. I think it's a real opportunity, given the amount of publicity and given the activism that I see across the state on this issue, in part, of course, enhanced by the fact that President Trump has also been raising the red flag about fraud and the impact that it could have on his 2020 re-election chances. So I'll turn it over to Brian from there. Thank you, John, for the time. And I guess we'll take questions at the end of this.
Yes, thank you, Joe. It was really great. For those of you that are just joining us on this call, I want to welcome you. We're going to have Brian speak here next. Yeah, Brian, if you could give a little bit of history about yourself, as far as your expertise in this subject, for everybody to know, that would be great. Are you there, Brian?
I'm here. I was just waiting for you to finish.
Okay, good. It's all yours.
All right, great. Thanks, John. My name is Brian Endel. Some of you may know me as a two-time conservative candidate, the true conservative candidate for Mat-Su Borough Assembly District 1. My background is in IT. That's what I graduated from college in management information systems. I have 20 years experience in IT, started as a programmer, And then I ended up as a supervisor of IT, managing IT projects, working with IT personnel, and I handled operations type stuff and worked with security personnel as well. So I have a well-rounded background in IT. And computer programming is where this where it kind of links to the electronic voting machines. And from my experience, I can say it's impossible to guarantee the validity or integrity of an election with electronic voting machines. With any electronic voting machine, you add additional necessary measures of security above and beyond that which is required by just doing a regular hand count. The only way to ensure a valid election is with paper ballots and hand counting election results upon request for either party. At a bare necessity, you have to have that ability to do a hand count after an election by either party. And that isn't a hand count of a ballot produced by a machine with machine code on it. They call it like a QR code. Looks like a little square with squigglies in it and stuff like that. That doesn't count. It has to be a English readable ballot that you can actually tally by human hand counting it. So that's my take on that. I want to go into electronic voting machines. Joe Miller mentioned the Diebold machine, and I won't specifically get into that. However, I'm going to touch on the basics of electronic voting machines, and I'll touch on the problems with electronic voting machines, as well as the readily available tools that are out there you can just go and purchase and hack a machine with. And then I'm going to go into some examples of the problems with these machines, etc., with actual YouTube videos. So these are things that we can post later or whatever if you want to get the exact references that I'm using here. So the basics of electronic voting machines. Electronic voting machine is just a dumb machine, and you load instructions into it. So dumb machine with instructions, but the instructions change every time because every election is different. We have different races, we've got different candidates, we got different questions. So in general, what usually happens is, let's say the borough, since I've dealt with the borough has a race, and they request from the vendor a set of instructions for this particular race. They give the vendor all the specifications, who's running, what questions are on it, and then they get back a set of instructions. Well, that set of instructions comes via a memory card. In the case of the borough, it's usually a memory card with the old voting machines that they've got. Otherwise, you can have a USB. It can be plugged into the internet. It can be hooked up to Wi-Fi. Any way to transfer that media to the machine. So that's basically how the electronic voting machine works. Dumb machine, get instructions, load the instructions in the machine. The machine now knows how to handle the ballot in the election. So moving on to the problems with electronic voting machines, of course you can have physical problems. The machine itself can crash. Anything that's built by man tends to crash at some point in time, vehicles, whatever. So it can crash, or someone can be destructive, bring a hammer in and smash it, So there's physical issues that a machine can be impacted with, but those aren't the ones I'm primarily going to deal with tonight. What I'm primarily going to deal with is the virus attacking a machine. So you may ask, well, what is a virus? Well, remember I said the machine has to be loaded with a set of instructions, right? So a virus is basically a malicious set of instructions, and that virus can be loaded on the machine anytime before the election. Also, the virus can run in the background, so you never know that it's actually there. And I mean, if it was loaded from the vendor itself, say someone hacked into the vendor's database, where the vendor has a database of all the elections across the United States or across Alaska or whatever, and someone hacked into it, and they decided to go change your race and stuff like that, you wouldn't even know. You can have all the seals on everything that you want, from the lieutenant governor, from whoever, and it can make it to that machine and still be hacked, and it could be running in the background and you wouldn't know it. Now, even worse, the virus can delete itself at the end. So it's not, and this stuff isn't rocket science. Believe me, if you've done anything with computers, what I'm talking about right now is very simple. And I'll let you know later that the instructions are all out there on how to do this step by step. So we talked about a virus and how it worked. It can be introduced at any time before the election. So even in testing, we talked about, you know, having a virus introduced at the vendor, but even when you're testing the machine, because a machine probably runs in two different modes, at least, every machine. There's a testing mode, and then there's an election mode. We know most machines have at least those two modes. I would say probably all of them do, but I don't know all the machines. So in the testing mode, for instance, they put votes in and test to make sure that, let's say, you know, you got 2 for George Washington, 1 for Benedict Arnold, and they want to make sure 3 votes went through and that George Washington wins the race. So they go and feed these things through. That's a testing mode. But then when they flip it to election mode, it behaves differently. So for instance, and that's important because the virus can run at certain times or throughout the whole thing, or you know, just specifically during election mode. And if it runs just during election mode, if you try to rerun the ballots later, you're not in election mode, you're in more of a testing mode or some other mode, and it may not operate. It may delete itself anyway, so you never see it again. So that's just some other information about that. So why would someone load a virus? Hmm? So so why would someone load a virus onto a machine? For 2 reasons mainly. One is to crash the machine. Now Joe mentioned in his presentation that there's a jam in the machine. Now, I'm not saying there was a virus that caused that jam, but that's one of the things that can actually a virus can do. It can freeze the machine up, and actually, some of the machines it can cause to even impact the hardware on the machine, where you have to order new hardware from the vendor. And this is with the machines we have in the Matsu Borough, they can do that if someone decided to crash the machine in such a way. And then also they use the virus to transfer votes from one candidate to another, or or via a percentage. And a lot of times it's by a percentage in which they would use the virus to go and move votes. So for instance, you know, with elections as they are right now, they're very close. Mine was the last race that I ran in, there were 25 vote difference. The mayor of Palmer, I believe, is on here, and there she is, Edna. And so Edna won by 3. Now, if you think about it, it's not a very high percentage that needs to be switched for someone to impact a race. So if someone wanted to impact my race or her race, it wouldn't take much to swing those votes. And they can even swing votes from one person to someone who's not running. You know, how would you detect that? You really, it'd be very difficult. And then especially when that's why hand count is important. And hand counts, and I'll show you an example in a little bit. When you request a hand count as a candidate, you should be able to get one right away. The clerk shouldn't be able to deny you a hand count. That happened to me, and that was not right. And so that is something that's happened in different parts of the nation as well. So it's not just a local problem, it's a national issue. And it's a block in order to prevent someone from actually checking the validity of an election. And it's wrong. So that can happen. So votes can, and I think I mentioned votes can be transferred during an election cycle. I did mention that. So I'm going to move on to the tools and procedures that are readily available. And Now, people over time have thought, well, we've got a lock on this particular piece of electronic voting, this electronic voting machine. There's a lock on it. No one can get into it, or that prevents people from getting into it. Probably not the case. A lot of these locks that are on the machines are basic keys that you have in office buildings. For instance, the keys to some of the machines out there are actually, you can buy them, and you can buy the same key to use in an office for a drawer on someone's file cabinet. It's that common of a key. For instance, I worked in ConocoPhillips, so I was on the 7th floor, and my key probably worked in someone else's office, maybe the 3rd or the 4th floor. I don't know. I never checked, but that's kind of how those keys work. So the keys are readily available, and if they're not, I mean, students are basically, well, there's a group from Princeton, college professor. He teaches his kids how to hack these machines and look into them. One of the kids picked the lock in a few minutes. This isn't some thief. This is just some college student goes to an Ivy League school and decide, well, I'm going to go try picking a lock. So locks are pickable and not very difficult. All the instructions to create a virus are online. You can find any one of them. You can find the instructions on how to do everything that I just said online, and step by step, it's very easy. Most machines are hacked in less than 7 minutes. There was one on, and there's I'll tell you about it in a little bit, but there's a group called DEF CON. Then that particular group meets once a year, at least once a year, and they hack into machines. It's kids that get together and they look and determine how to hack into machines. They got people to teach them, and they find new ways. So they do this every year. So any machine that can be bought can be hacked, because if you bought it, there's a chance that someone else had the opportunity to buy it too. And they're not very expensive, $100, couple $100 for a machine. So maybe it's $1,000, someone's going to an Ivy League school, they're going to pick up one of those machines for $1,000, not a problem. So I mentioned the guy from Princeton. Well, his class got together, and one of the students figured out how to produce a procedure to hack into a machine in 1 minute, an electronic voting machine. And they demonstrated it on Fox News. I'm not going to show you that one, but I'll provide the link if you want to. So it's breaking into these machines, even the one at the borough, because I'm going to show you an example of how the one at the borough can be broken into. And it's right online. There's a YouTube video on it. We'll see that in a little bit. So I think I mentioned all that. So let's so you remember the race from Iowa? Anybody, the Iowa caucus? Mayor Pete paid Shadow Inc. This is the company that developed the little voting app that they had that crashed, and he paid them, and he ended up getting the highest vote count after the machine crashed and all that. I don't think that was a coincidence, personally. I think they rigged the election. But that's just one example of something that happened recently. Because a lot of my examples are from long ago, but this one was recent. Now there's more, and I'm gonna give you a brief little. I'm gonna start to share my screen, Carol. So just so you know, and I'm gonna go through a number of YouTube videos, give you a little bit of explanation beforehand, and then start out with them here. So give this a shot. There's a picture of a QR code below, just so everybody knows. All right, this particular video is of a local New Jersey election where the results were actually reversed. So the one candidate got the other candidate's votes, and we're going to watch two little segments from that. And a lot of these, all these videos pretty much have two segments to them. I'm just picking out the key parts for you to see. The rest of it is if you want the video to watch it, you're certainly more than welcome. John will somehow find a way to post that, and I'll help him out.
But they called it backwards. It was simply backwards.
South Jersey voting machine incident makes waves.
It was 2011, and Cynthia Zirkle and her husband Ernie were running in a local election in their hometown of Fairton, New Jersey.
Was this a big deal here?
It was. It was both a big deal, but people said, we don't trust the system. And that was sad, very sad.
How did you know you would win this election?
Because I knew 33 of the people that voted for us, and we lost 33-10. And I knew that that wasn't the case.
The results had been switched with those of their opponents.
We started calling people that we thought we knew voted for us because it was just in this district of this township, and we know everybody in this district.
Because people voted on electronic voting machines that leave no paper trail, there was no way to recount the votes. Do you blame the electronic voting machine?
Now I blame people. And unfortunately, I think that no matter what system you come up with can be rigged.
The FBI investigating accusations Vladimir Putin and the Russians were trying to sway the election.
The system, folks, is rigged. It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system.
The FBI.
Had to leave that part in there. Here comes the next one, next segment of this.
The tabulation of them, but I'm comfortable that we have taken every step possible to make this particular machine secure.
As for the Zirkles, they ended up winning their election after a judge ordered a new vote. Still, they have little faith in our electoral process.
When you have candidates that have enormous amounts of money at their disposal, elections can be bought, and they can be bought at the local level in enough places that it will make a difference. And that's my biggest fear.
Can you trust a voting machine that's electronic with no paper trail?
Nope. And you can't trust the people running that kind of a system.
All right, this next one is from Racine, Wisconsin, where the individuals that are contesting the election and have actual evidence that the votes are not being counted correctly by the machine, they are unable to get a paper count, a hand count of the ballots.
My name is Liz Whitlock, and I live in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. In Racine County, they were only going to do a machine count.
And by the way, this is a recount of the election in Wisconsin for the 2016 election.
And we really wanted a hand count. We decided to do our own hand count using these clickers. This is a click counter. You click it and the numbers go up. You can hand count ballots like this as they're going through an optical scanner. What we were doing was we had 3 observers on one scanner machine, and one would click for Clinton, one would click for Trump, and the other one would click the undervotes. And the undervotes are when the ballot is not marked. We can see the ballots very clearly. Our numbers were quite a bit off from the scanner. In that day.
So we're gonna go to where she's in front of the clerk, and they're about to request a hand count.
Saying except that they're requesting a hand count.
You want to ask me what you don't understand?
Is this the purpose of a hand count? Yes or no?
Yes. The purpose of the hand count is to get to the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
The purpose of this is a hand count.
How much? It's only 300 something.
I don't care. I don't care if it's 5. I am not going to do a hand count for anybody.
I am just stunned at how inaccurate the whole thing is. Like.
So that was Racine, Wisconsin, denying a hand count. Next, we're going to go to how to hack the AccuVote optical scanner. There's the AccuVote optical scanner right there.
Okay, I'm going to take you through how to break into a machine like this.
So I'm not going to give the whole thing. I'm going to break this up.
I'm going to
Go to
use
the end. So he does a number of things, but just to let you know it's on there, he took a couple screws out, and there you go.
Part up here, and now I can pull out the memory card. I can take another memory card and insert it in, or I can change this memory card, put it back in, and put this back down. The bulb still has the proper seal for the Secretary of State, so I don't have to change the number or anything. Just to make this a little easier, I'm going to use a pair of long nose pliers to hold.
So he basically puts it back together. So he took it apart and put it back together. And as you can see, it took about 2 minutes to take it apart and 2.5 minutes, and probably take another 2.5 minutes to put it back together. So it's not overly complicated. Next, we're going to go to an expert. Whoops. Get I have something in the way, just a second. So we're going to go to an expert from Symantec. You know, like Norton Antivirus, Symantec is antivirus software type company. Here we go.
Symantec is the world's largest cybersecurity company. A lot of what we end up focusing on is where the future attacks are going to be. This year being an election year, we decided to dive into the system, the ecosystem of an election, which includes everything from e-voting systems to the network that tallies those votes to the overall organization that allows one to broadcast who's winning and who isn't. In order to develop an environment that allowed us to simulate a real-world voting ecosystem, we ordered a lot of the equipment like an attacker would or someone doing research would. Went to an online auctioning site where we were easily able to purchase an e-voting system from the last election for a few $100s. We also were able to buy the chip cards that are used to be an identifier in this in the process of e-voting, and we also were able to buy some of the things that program those chip cards. First thing that typically happens.
So just wanted to show you that these things are out there, they can be done, and we've got an expert demonstrating that, hey, you know, it's not too hard. Now I want to get into one. This is going to be just a touch longer, and this is one called Fraction Magic. And basically what happens in this video, and this is the short version of a longer video, we're only going to see about 4 minutes of it, but basically they show how votes are switched via percentages. So these votes actually record, this particular database actually records votes as a percentage or as a decimal. You know, you can only have 1 vote or 2 votes. You can't have 1.5 or 2.5 or whatever. But the machines, the database allows votes to be recorded as decimals, and that causes problems because it allows people to manipulate votes, and actually they found that that basically if they change some database settings, they can actually impact the vote. So there's some real issues with some of these systems out there. And we'll go into 2 parts of this particular one.
I'm Bev Harris, and I'm the author of the book Black Box Voting and also the founder of blackboxvoting.org. And my earlier work was featured in the Emmy-nominated HBO documentary Hacking Democracy. Now in 2003, I found about 40,000 voting machine files. Among these files were the secret programs for the GEMS central tabulator, the central server, the master computer that controls what goes into every voting machine and what comes out of them. A couple years back, I shared these files with a Memphis programmer named Benny Smith, and he has found what I would characterize as a master key to the GEMS master computers.
Ready? Take. My name is Benny Smith, and I'm born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I found something that it reeked when I first found it. But then the intrigue made me say, well, why is it there? Votes being counted as money. 16,034 votes and 0.3.
Oh, wait a minute.
You can divide them.
So the master computer can divide whole votes up into fractions, and we'll see what that can do to an election. Right now, the GEMS program is installed and counting votes in 25 states and 616 jurisdictions. But fractional counting began to migrate from the GEMS program into other vendors. Voting systems which count votes as fractions may count as many as 99% of all American votes in 2016. There are two screens you're going to see, which are the.
So now he goes into how he basically hacked not really change the system, but just use the system, and shows how these votes can be manipulated. And you'll see two different screens. One side shows one, not right away, but eventually you'll see two screens. One shows what the calculated percent actually is, but the other one shows what it was set to, so that they're equaling, and basically the election's been rigged. You'll see.
Let's start with this. You probably noticed there were some big, fat, glaring decimals in the results shown in Benny's magic show. So I asked him about that.
I need the presence of these to effectively manipulate.
You need to have it fractionalized.
Yes.
Now, does it need to show that?
No, I just chose to show it.
So the default setting, when you get the reports, it hides all the decimals.
And now we don't see that 0.31 anymore.
Oh, so if I'm looking at this, I have no idea that you just changed everything.
And that's the purpose of showing side by side that I know that it's 16034.31, but on here it is rounded. And I can go into multiple counties within one. I've never been there, never seen what it looks like. I'm latching on to Alaska, and now it's coming in.
Oh my.
Look, there's Fred Dyson right there.
You can go to any place.
Any place.
And it's going to know who's running and what the races are.
Yes. If I jump out of here and go to Marin County.
That's in California.
California. Boxer is her. Yeah. There's Boxer. She's running against a guy named Mickey.
You're not reprogramming these counties.
No. I'm
You're
complimenting them.
You're using what's already there.
Yes.
So this is basically one size fits all. You can be one person and you can be entering different places, different states, gain total control.
Yes.
So here's the screens I was talking about. One on the left, one on the right was manipulated. The one on the left shows the actual result. I'll save you the gunfire. But basically what we have there is, like I said, on the right side, it was manipulated, the percentage. They put a percentage in there, and on the left side, that's what you get. So that's kind of disturbing. And since Alaska is part of this whole thing, that makes it even more disturbing. This video is available out there. And as I said, there's a longer one as well if you want to see the full version. So you can look at that. We'll provide it somehow. And the last one that I wanted to look at here is this was from Restoring Liberty. Now I did look, and the video wasn't available as it was before, but basically Joe commented on the HBO documentary and took a slice of that documentary and showed conversation with a hacker that actually hacked into Alaska's election system. Now, he didn't do anything, according to what he said, because he was kind of scared that if he did do something, he would get caught or in trouble, but he found out that it was easily hacked. And I imagine that Alaska probably went and fixed whatever problem that he found. However, if he got in there once, chances are someone's probably looking to do that again. Doesn't give me much confidence in the system itself, especially since the first time they were able to hack into it. And from my experience, I can tell you that if there's a target that someone wants to hit, and they really want to get in, they'll get in. It's not an issue. I mean, I remember one time in my career, a bank called one of my coworkers, and the bank said to him, here's our site, tell us what's wrong. 15 minutes later, he called him back up and says, you need to fix this, this, and this. I mean, so these types of, if someone can tell you that much about a bank in that short of a period of time, you have to know that a system that isn't quite as strong, because I'm guaranteeing, if that hacker got in there like he did, that system wasn't that strong to begin with. Now, they may have beefed it up, but it's very concerning. So I want to go back to my original statement that without at a minimum the ability for a candidate to request a hand recount of legible English readable ballots, you can't guarantee the integrity of an election. And more importantly, I think long term we have to look at getting back to just hand counting, or hand counting ballots. So that's all I had, John.
I need to let people know that this is the second time we've presented a lot of this information. The first time was at a meeting. The governor was there, and a lot of this information was presented to the governor. Since that time, though, a lot more information has been being made available. There's a lot of great organizations that are looking into this. Judicial Watch is suing states and counties that are not following federal law and regulations by going through their voting rolls. There was a county, LA County, where 1.5 million obsolete voter registrations were removed from their voter rolls. They're going after a lot of different other states. And incidentally, they had an election down in Southern California, I think it might have been in the San Diego area, where the Republican literally won by, I think, 12 points in a democratically held district over 2 decades. So it really makes a difference. And now what they're doing is they're anybody that has a driver's license, and they issue driver's license to illegal aliens in California, they'll get mailed a paper ballot. So instead of remedying the situation and making it more transparent, they're going in the other direction and making it more easier, acceptable to fraud and manipulation. So we got to be on our toes. Like we said earlier, this is a very important issue. And if you're a candidate, and Joe Miller would be a good example of this, he poured his blood, sweat, and tears into his campaigns. I mean, we were part of his campaign, and I don't think he slept for a whole year. And the amount of money and the effort that goes into this from everybody, not just the candidates themselves, I can't imagine what a heartbreaking experience that would be to find that all your hard-earned efforts you were cheated out of them. It's just devastating. So I just wanted to make that point that this has already been shown and presented to the governor. We're grateful that the lieutenant governor's here joining us. We have one more testimony from Jim Passink, if he's there. He was having a little bit of trouble getting on the call. Jim, are you around? And this has to do with our local election office here in Wasilla. So if Jim, if you're there, we're.
Can you hear me, John?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, I'll take it from here then. Appreciate Joe Miller's report and Brian Endel's talking about various observations and technicalities. My effort will be to point out, to testify as a firsthand witness of 7 of us actually at the Alaska Bureau of Elections office in Wasilla a couple of days after the 2014 election for Senate. Very much involved in this. Amy Walker and I ran the sign campaign for Joe Miller in 2014, and then I ran it for Joe in 2016. So we have much more, a very, very vested interest in the outcome for all of us Alaskans. So what I'm reporting is not is not hearsay. This is firsthand witness report. Amy Walker and I set up an appointment with the Bureau of Elections a couple of days after the election to scrutinize and to validate the questioned and absentee ballots, which they don't get around to for some time after an election. And there were 7 of us that showed up. Myself, Amy Walker, the elder Zimmerman, Mr. and Mrs. Zimmerman, Ron Johnson, and the 7th one, I won't say who it was because that person asked not to be disclosed because we had to swear an oath, a non-disclosure oath. I believe they actually got our signatures notarized. And so that person saying, I don't want them coming after me, but you know what? I don't mind if they come after me or not. Let's get it on. So it took about an hour and a half to get us signed in to get into where the ballots would be counted. We had to read the 50-page elections procedures pamphlet. Like I say, swear an oath, get name tags, and so on and so on. And then we were led into the room, and there's these 2 young girls stuffing ballots in the machines. And so I said, well, to the boss lady, okay, well, if you're done practicing, let's start validating ballots. She said, the boss said, look, we obviously we knew you were coming, and I wasn't going to wait around for you. We started this yesterday. And so I said, well, where do we come in here? We've asked to lay hands on, scrutinize, validate. She said, you will not touch a single ballot. You stand back and don't interfere. You can stand and watch. Well, most of us stood and watched for about 8.5 hours while that went on. And so I'll give you some of the the salient, the important observations that we made that I just don't have the time today to go into all of it, but I'll just tell you the important ones. I first asked that asked if we could run 100 ballots and visually make a count and see how the machines count compared to an actual count and a machine count. And she said, nope, none of that. And I said, okay, next question. How do you go about programming the machines? And she said, quote, I program these machines the way I want them counted, the ballots counted, end quote. I'll take that to my grave. And I says, well, okay, so what's the control about your programming? She says, I do this myself. Don't you trust me? I said, nope. Why do you think we're here? Then my next question was, is it true? Of course, I already knew the answer, but is it true that for about $12.50, I can go to the Best Buy or Radio Shack and I can use the same adapter that you're using on your laptop, and with just a little bit of insider trading, and Brian mentioned about how these things can be bought and paid by special interests, little inside trade. I could get your code and I could take my laptop out to the voting precincts, sit there out in my truck, and I can reprogram those machines to count the ballots the way that I want them counted. How did you know that? She said. So I said, well, it's incumbent upon those of us here and the rest of us Alaskans as your employer to know that we're getting we're not getting cheated. We're getting our money's worth out of you. You work for us. She said, you are not my boss, and I do not work for you. This is firsthand. This is notes that I took back in 2014. I'm not twitching my memory here. And so so we start observing the count. Okay, so there's there's 2 girls, 2 machines, 3 piles of ballots. One is the fresh ones. The other pile is obviously the counted ones. And there's a third one for those ballots the machines rejected. Now, the boss lady told me that there's pretty much around 10% of the ballots cast that the machines would not accept. I said, okay, what do you do with those? She says, well, that's simple. Juneau, in every election, Juneau sends out to the precincts 100% plus, more than 100% of ballots to, just in case a miracle happens in Alaska and we get more than 30% of our registered voters show up. In other words, there's going to be roughly 70% of unused ballots laying around somewhere. And in this case, she's got them there in after the elections, the precincts turn them in to her in the Wasilla district. And she says she takes the rejected ballot and she decides how that voter wanted to vote. And she takes a fresh new ballot and fills in the ballot for that person and shreds the original. And I said, wow. And Ron Johnson even said, wow. I said, well, don't you know that the rules on the elections in Alaska is that no ballot ever gets destroyed until the lieutenant governor certifies the election, end quote. She said, well, yeah, I know that, but Divisions Central down in Anchorage, they want an accurate count here, and I don't want question ballots sitting around, and I make sure that they get an accurate count, and that's how I do it. Amazing. The next thing that we observed was these young girls are temporary hires for during the elections. They're looking for people right now. Carol sent out several emails saying, hey, they need help for the election coming up. And so these young girls were sitting there and hopefully not, well, I try to be kind here. They didn't look like they were smart girls. Let's put it that way. It looked like something was wrong there. But so we're watching the ballots hour after hour being fed into the machines. And then, oh, wait a minute, a couple of us noticed, well, the girl just took the ballot after it was ran through the machine and put it back onto the uncounted, the fresh pile. And I told the boss lady, I said, boss lady, did you see that? No, what happened? I said, see that ballot was just counted. She put it back on the wrong pile. The boss lady reached over and tapped the back of the girl's hand and said, now look, I told you how you're not supposed to do that. You got 3 piles here and you're not supposed to mix them up. Ron Johnson made the comment right there. Ron, we pray for him. He just went under major heart surgery for a heart attack. But Ron turned to me and quietly said, Jim, it says this is like Nazi Germany in here. The boss lady heard him and she yelled at her. She said, I heard that. And it wound up, she filed a formal complaint against us with Juneau. Formal complaint. Because Ron dared to say that that wasn't right. Okay. So there's let's look at my notes here. Okay, so this my report, which could be substantiated by talking to the other witnesses, is not, again, it's not conjecture. It is not hearsay. It's firsthand. And when you have the boss lady in this case being, she was trusting that I would not violate the non-disclosure agreement that I made, but I don't see there's a problem between me and our Savior. I don't see a problem there. And so the this, what we're adding up to today between Joe Miller's report and Brian's report, and then this adding to what happens physically with the ballots at the counting, in the counting process, points out that this is no way can this be an honest, an accurate result, and most likely it's a dishonest result. And the people that we employ that work for us to physically handle this ballots are, according to my report here, are quite brazen about how they don't give a darn about that, the system being screwed up and them being a part of the mess. And this is one of the reasons that several years ago I saw a survey about, that's done, I don't know, every several years, about the integrity in state governments, including in voting. And then that survey, Alaska ranked number 7th most corrupt of all 50 states. There's 43 states less corrupt than Alaska by that survey. So that's what I have to report, and I hope it's helpful to convince our governor and our lieutenant governor that we don't need these machines. We can save a lot of money. You get by sending the ones back that they just wasted $4 million on, send them back, get our money back, and get rid of the rest of them. Just do a hand count with the witnesses from both sides, conservative, liberal witnesses there to count, to scrutinize and validate the ballots, which is what we were trying to do, but we were refused that opportunity after the 2014 election. I'm open to questions, John.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to have some questions here in a little bit. I want to give the Lieutenant Governor a chance to make a statement if he cares to. But first, Carol, could you put up the executive order that was given to the governor? This is an executive order that was given to the governor, hoping that he would institute some proper procedures and some safety features. We already covered some of the background, and the purpose of it is to restore our confidence in our election process. There's 8 points that we feel would be very, very constructive to assure us that our elections are done with complete integrity. And I don't know if you're going to be able to download this for further reference, but I'll just go over these things fairly quickly and you can follow along. Point number 1 is any poll watcher at any precinct immediately upon the conclusion of voting hours of any election may deem that the precinct vote totals for any candidate, initiative, referendum, and or recall be validated by a hand count conducted by election board and observed by any poll watcher. And if there's any discrepancy, such as hand count and AccuVote precinct tabulator or any other electronic summary of precinct votes, then the hand count shall be transmitted by the election board to the regional office immediately before the beginning of voting hours, the election board must comply with any poll watcher's demand to open and view any storage compartment in any AccuVote or other ballot counting machine. Number 3, any poll watcher may use any recording device while conducting his or her review of the election process. However, such devices may not be used to record any voter's ballot while said ballot is within the control of the voter. All unused ballots immediately upon conclusion of voting hours of any election shall be accounted for, reported by serial number, and returned to the regional counting centers. Prior to the certification of any vote, any candidate standing for election in that region or his or her designee may review such unused ballots under the supervision of an election official. Number 5, prior to certification of any vote, no ballot shall be transported, secured, or stored by any private agency. And number 6, all ballots cast by absentee or early voting shall immediately upon receipt by any election official be stored in a transparent, secure container in full view of a video recording device and live streamed 24 hours per day to a publicly accessible internet website maintained by the state of Alaska until said ballots are removed for review and counting. All parties, candidates shall be notified at least 72 hours in advance of any such removal and counting of sealed said ballots, and shall have the opportunity for significant poll watchers to view such a count. If the count by the AccuVote machines or other mechanical or electronic means, any poll watcher may demand a hand count of such ballots. Number 7, for the election official, if any election official creates a duplicate ballot from a facsimile ballot, electronic vote, damaged ballot, or for any other reason created or changed any ballot, such action shall be completed in full view of a video recording device and live streamed to a publicly accessible internet website maintained by the state of Alaska. And number 8, for any election recount demand by any candidate under law, the election official must conduct a hand count of all ballots if such a candidate so requests. You know, if there's a way of validating these votes, people are not going to try to, tamper with the votes because there's a great possibility that they'll be caught. If there's no checks and balances involved, then there's no repercussions and there's no control, there's no restraint. So by the fact that we can validate the votes and make sure all these 8 points are taken care of, will eliminate just the even people even wanting to mess with elections because there would be a possibility of them getting caught. So that is the letter that we presented to our governor. Those are pretty logical, simple steps that we can do to assure that our elections are above board, transparent, and accurate. So, Lieutenant Governor Myers, we're so grateful for you to be here. I just want to give you an opportunity to make a statement and share where we're at. And then after the Lieutenant Governor speaks, we'll have a time of asking some questions. So thank you very much for being here, sir.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. And I want to thank everyone for taking your evening tonight to learn more about elections. And this has been very educational for me as well. I hadn't seen some of the videos that Brian had shown. And, that is concerning. Now, I think some of the concerns with the machines we can address and we can talk about, and I'll tell you as much as I know about the security of those before and after they go out to the precincts. And by the way, before I forget, Josh Appleby is also on Zoom with me. He's my chief of staff, and actually, he was deeply involved in picking the new machines, and certainly knows the statute very well. I mean, we do have to follow the current statute as we go through elections each time. And then also too, there's several federal laws that get involved that we have to follow. You know, we were sued, I think in 2014 over not having ballots in some of the native languages. So we have special machines now that will interpret the ballots into the language that is spoken, as well as for people with special needs. But keep in mind, elections are very people oriented. They're good. It takes a lot of workers, a lot of I call them volunteers. They are paid, not very much, and that is something that we were able to improve on this year, is to bump up that pay a little bit, at least get it above minimum wage. And this year is going to be very unusual anyway because of the virus, and of course, some folks said that, you know, because of that, and because most of our workers tend to be retired and over 65, it's not fair to do the in-person voting, and that we should all do like Anchorage, which, by the way, I live here, but I don't agree with how Anchorage does their elections. That, you know, they wanted us to do vote by mail. And again, local elections are up to the local counties, boroughs, in the case of Anchorage, I guess, the local government. So we don't have much to do with local elections other than they do use our voter registration list, which that in itself has been a real challenge. And I'll tell you why, because again, this was done by initiative. And that, I think that's something I would really encourage you guys to consider too, that if you don't see the changes made that you're hoping to see, and by the way, some of the changes you had mentioned, we agree with. And we were working with Senator Schauer. He had a bill he had introduced, and then of course the other party had two bills. I think one was by JKT, and the other one was by Chris Tuck. So we of course wanted to work with Senator Schauer because it's just easier to work with him than the others. But as it turns out, none of the bills passed, and really the only thing that did get passed, and we do thank the legislature for doing this. And by the way, I see a lot of legislators on the screen here, so that's great. It's good to see the interest and involvement. But the only thing that was passed was that we could do vote by mail this year because of the virus. But you know, and this was brought up earlier, you know, there is some alleged fraud that occurred even last election. And I am not a believer of the system here in Anchorage that vote by mail is the best way to go and the most secure way to go. So we're going to make this work. The traditional method of in-person voting, where you go to your polls, and if people are concerned about, whoa, somebody's got a gun there. I hope you're not upset with me already. You know, and if you are concerned about going to the polls because of the virus, then of course you can do the absentee, and we're gonna really promote absentee this year, and as well as early voting, but also to still have in place the in-person elections, which again does require the use of the tabulator, the machine that has been spoken about, and I can assure you that and by the way, we are looking for workers, as was mentioned earlier. It's just so hard we have 441 precincts statewide, and especially in some of the small villages in rural Alaska, it is hard to get workers and get them trained, and then get them to actually show up on election day. So that is a challenge, and again, that's the advantage to a vote by mail, which again, people who really believe in this, that's what they say is, hey, you don't need as many people, you don't need to send out the machines, but the cost isn't a factor here, because it does cost us some to send the machines out, but it also costs on the postage to send everybody a ballot. And again, as I mentioned on the initiative was passed in 2014 or 2016 that said everybody that gets a PFD automatically is registered to vote. So we truly have more people registered to vote in Alaska than actually live in Alaska. And that is, it's embarrassing, it's frustrating, but what happens, and especially it's happened in the last 3-4 years, is that as people move out of state, they don't tell us. So we have to, by federal law, keep them on the voter registration list at least for 4 years, and then we can start contacting them and say, hey, do you notice you haven't voted? Don't you want to vote? Blah, blah, blah. And we can start taking them off that way. But unless people tell us that they've moved and no longer want to vote in Alaska, they stay on our voter registration list. And so that has been a big frustration. And a lot of times where people get their PFD is not where they live and so forth. But and that was something that we had hoped to get rid of this year, was that when you sign up to get your PFD, that you would have to opt in to register to vote instead of just automatically. So can you imagine, especially our primary, which I support, where you choose which ballot you want, we wouldn't know which ballot to send to folks. So there's approximately 450,000 people registered to vote. That would be 900,000 ballots that we'd have to send out. And as was mentioned, especially in the primary, only about 30% of the people actually vote. So there would be at least 600,000 unsecured ballots laying around either on your table, kitchen table, and maybe in the garbage can, or what often happens is you find them at the post office. So that's very concerning, and again, that's why we didn't want to go to a vote by mail system. And I haven't heard or received any feedback from you all as to if you support the traditional method, granted not perfect, or if you would prefer to go to a vote by mail system. Again, my preference is the traditional method that we've always done, but just put in some of these security measures that was talked about tonight. Now, I would like to, and also hand counts are difficult because a lot of times you have 7, 8 different things to vote on a ballot, and so if you have over 300,000 ballots at the end of the night, you can imagine how long that would take. And again, I can't even get enough people to work the polls, let alone then stay and help us count the ballots afterwards. So we need a lot more volunteers and a lot more workers. And I've encouraged all of you, because you're all very interested in this subject, or else you wouldn't be here tonight, to offer to help on election day, and again, and both at the primary and at the general. Now, and Josh, I may have to ask you to help me on this, but our machines are programmed, our tabulators, excuse me, are programmed, and the little card that you were talking about, Brian, is sealed up, and then we send the machines out to the villages or wherever they go. 441 different places. And if the supervisor sees that seal has been broken, then they automatically know this has been tampered with, and we don't use that machine. from what I've been told, that's never happened, but I mean, it could happen possibly. And these machines are all locked up. There's a video camera on the room where they're locked up. So if somebody did try to break in and tamper with them, we would know that. And then again, when they're actually sent out and the supervisor there sees that they've been messed with, again, they're not accepted. So I guess and we do, you're absolutely right. Russia was involved in our elections last time, and they typically like to be involved in presidential elections just because they want to be, they just want to be ornery, and they want to interfere with democracy, which they don't have over there. But Homeland Security assures me that yes, they did try to hack into our system, and no, they did not, and were not successful. And there was 20 other states too that they also targeted, other than Alaska. Actually, they tried all 50 states, and then they tried harder on us and 20 other states. But again, no votes were changed, and the only thing that we see here with the foreign influence is just that they did manipulate or try to manipulate people from not voting, number one, and then number two, you know, they tend to, whoever the front runner is to try to make them look bad however way they can, again via social media. So yes, and again, statute is pretty clear. Anybody can ask for a recount, and typically we do the recounts, I'm told, versus a hand count because it is just so much quicker to do the recount. But we do have a state elections board that oversees the elections once all the ballots are counted and in, whether it be absentee, which again you have to wait for a week to get all the absentee in. And what they will do is they will randomly hand count a precinct in each district and make sure it matches what the machine tabulator said. Now, that's not as good as hand counting every precinct in every district. But again, statute has such a narrow time period. And again, Josh, you'll have to help me on this. I think that that we have to have the elections certified. Is it 10 days after the election, Josh? I've concluded my comments here, so I'm going to let Josh add what comments he has, and then we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. So Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you. By the way, I'm at the office and Josh is at the office, and for some reason they decided to use the jackhammer tonight. So if you hear that in the background, I apologize.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Yes, you're correct. But you know, and the timelines are laid out in statute for when the election needs to be certified. However, we do have provisions in statute for recounts and when they are to occur and how long you have to actually get them done.
Josh, can you comment any more on the security of the machines?
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, we have we keep them locked up in an armed and secured room before they're sent out to each of the precincts. They're tested for accuracy and before they're sent out, and they're tested again before the start of the election. And certainly, if anybody has several minutes with a machine that's unmonitored, I agree that with Brian that there are nefarious people out there that can get inside and do them. But generally, that's that takes fraud to a highest degree for someone to get to that sort of level.
Yeah, and I might comment too that, and this is frustrating to me. Again, I'm new to this whole process, and Josh is too, and so we have fresh eyes looking at the way it's being done and asking a lot of questions. But a lot of people want us to investigate if they see something funny, see something suspicious. And we in Division of Elections have no investigative authority. All we can do is if something doesn't look right, doesn't sound right, doesn't smell right, we can turn it over to the State Patrol. And again, that's what we did the last election, 2018, was that the signatures just didn't look right on some of the absentee ballots. And so our absentee ballot supervisor turned this over to the State Patrol. State Patrol took a look at it and they said, yep, that looks that there is reasons to be concerned here. And since it did involve a person out of state, the FBI got involved, and that's all we can do. We just turn over whatever evidence that we have to the authorities, and then they'll do whatever investigation they're going to do. Again, as I mentioned, we have 2 initiatives on the ballot this year, and they're going to be very long, complicated, but people have had some success with these initiatives. Again, if they can't get it passed through the legislative process, and I would certainly encourage you to pursue that route if we're not able to get the changes that you want done in statute. And now, you got several legislators and representatives and senators on here. Hopefully they'll introduce a bill, and we'll work with them to try to get these changes that you're asking for accomplished. So that concludes my remarks. Again, Josh and I are open for any questions you might have.
Well, thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. We'll begin our question and answer period right now. First, I want to make, I think, according to the executive order on number 8, it said, for any election recount demanded by any candidate under law, election officials must conduct a hand count of the ballots for if such candidate so requests. So I would imagine there are going to be some races that are going to be obviously won by a popular candidate, but those close races, or those maybe certain regions where things just don't seem to add up, a candidate may want to request a hand count at that time. I don't think we're asking, although it would be good if we could have every ballot by hand, but those that are requested to be counted by hand would be counted by hand. So it would alleviate a lot of the people to have to work each precinct, each district to count all the votes. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, John. And I think, well, certainly if it's a close election, there's going to be a recount done anyway, at no cost. But now there is a difference between a recount and a hand count. And if I hear correctly, you want the hand count, because that's where you actually take the ballots out and you go through each one. Very time consuming, but yes, that can be done. But there is a cost, because obviously we have to hire more temporary people to do the recounts, and I call them volunteers, but they get paid, and after a while that adds up, and we estimate to do a complete hand count for a statewide race would be $100,000. But if you want to just do a House race, it would be $2,500.
Yes.
So that's possible. That's possible. Again, if the race is close and you want to recount, and you specifically want it to be a hand count, that can be done.
Yeah. So basically, it's important that every ballot is accounted for, and that if the race is close, or if the candidate desires to have a recount, that it has to be a hand count, because if you just send the same ballots through the same machines, you're probably going to get the same results. And then we don't know if the machines were tampered with or whatever. So that would be the way to validate an election, everything accounted for and hand counted. And I know in some places they have both parties there viewing everything that's going on. And I think maybe some of the cost is even shared by the candidates' campaign themselves to do something like that, to alleviate the cost to the state, but just a suggestion. So
no, you're right. And we would encourage poll watchers, to watch the polls, look at the machines before we open up the polls. And again, we're always looking for people not only to work at the polls, but also to serve on the state review board that does the audit at the end of the election. But again, because in statute we only have 3 days, basically from when you get that last absentee ballot to when we certify the election. I think in the past they've just done a recount versus a hand count, but that's requested, and we just got to hire more people temporarily to do all the recount. Depending, again, if it's a House district, that's pretty easy. Senate district, still pretty easy, but a statewide hand count takes time.
Yes.
John, this is Carol. I have several hands up, and I'm getting some emails from people who would like to talk and ask questions. First, I have Brian Endel with his hand up.
Thanks, Carol. Though I wanted to make 2 comments here. I'll put my hand down here. Oops, I probably raised it right again as you lowered it. So the first comment is, I actually made a request to the clerk, because this is at the Matsu borough level, but the request was before any absentee ballots were counted. I basically asked, because I knew about the machines and how they worked, and sending the same ballots to the same machine isn't going to produce you any different results, or may not produce you any different results. So I asked, so what's the possibility that I do a hand count? And I was flatly denied. That was wrong. That should never happen, because if you can't prove by a hand count what the results are on a given precinct or whatever, you don't have a valid election. I'm sorry, you don't. Those machines can be manipulated, and that's what I wanted to check. Were they manipulated? I would have been satisfied if I could have done a couple precincts, and I would have been willing to pay for it, but I was not allowed to. That was wrong. So I'm going to get off of that comment, but go to the next one, which is Mr. Appleby. If you want to look at specifically the vendors, machines, or at least pay a little bit of focus to that, because if anything happens at the vendor site where their data is corrupted, or there's a virus introduced there, or something is switched around, you'll never see what happens on the other end. In other words, all your seals will be in place, but the election's already toast. That's why it's absolutely a necessity to have a hand count available to a candidate upon request. Otherwise, you just don't know, and you can never validate it. It's just a fact. It's not something that can be argued against. So those are my comments, and I'll leave it at that.
My apologies to Sharon. I think I accidentally lowered your hand just a minute ago. Sharon is next.
All right, I unmuted it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm Sharon Kay. This is my brother Harold Rudolph sitting next to me. And I'm at my sister Cecilia's house. She's a techie in the family. That's why we're here at the home of the late Dick Lobdell. Many of you may know, remember Dick Lobdell? I have a question here from a good friend, Holly. She's been listening on my iPhone from Talkeetna. I'm in Anchorage. She asked if, this is for Kevin, Lieutenant Governor, if you witnessed irrefutable evidence that the same voting machines as the state of Alaska use are programmable or corruptible, would you institute a hand count or an honest tally in the 2020 Alaska elections?
Well, first of all, I might say that the machines we had, we'd had since 1998, and we knew there was problems with them. Now, the problems were more that they just would break down out in rural Alaska in particular, and a lot of that has to do with the shipping and the weather. It can be quite cold in November. And so we have actually gone to hand counts out in rural Alaska. Again, the only thing prohibiting us from doing a total statewide hand count is just the time and the cost. You know, I would certainly, we could do you know, the close races that some of you had mentioned, whether it be you know, a House race or a Senate race, if somebody requested that. But statewide race, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to know myself as just from a management standpoint. And
I think
I know the governor would as well. And I think even though money's tight this year, we'll do that.
Yes, I agree. I think the money will be well spent. I mean, consensus, I think, from the state of Alaska is that.
Okay.
We are tired of the corruption, and we would.
Okay. We
willing to pay the money.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just getting the people. I don't understand it. I mean, we actually have a pretty high unemployment here in Anchorage and actually statewide right now. But you know, we're not getting people that you know, want to work for. I think our pay is somewhere between $12 and $15 this year an hour. So, you know, if we don't have the help, then it makes it difficult to do a statewide hand count in 3 days.
I think a lot of senior citizens would be willing to get out there and volunteer.
Actually, Sharon, that's the problem. Is the seniors that we've had in the past are declining. They don't want to. They're afraid of getting the virus. And again, they're the.
Well, that's quite a ways away yet. So.
August.
You know.
Yeah. Okay.
August, November.
Yeah, and you're right. I think now that I think of it, most the most contested races will be in November, and hopefully then the virus is gone. Depends on who you talk to. It may be, we may have another wave of it come through in November. It's hard to say, but we'll do the best we can to get qualified people to help us with that recount that you're requesting. And I know the governor. I'll talk to him. I'm sure he'll find me the $100,000 to make it happen.
Appreciate that.
But we do need workers, and in the past it has been our seniors, and they make good workers. We'd love to have them back, but as of right now, and understandably so, they're very vulnerable to this virus, and they're just scared. Even though we assure them we'll have all the protective equipment, they just don't want to take the risk.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Next, I have Shelley Hughes.
We can figure out how to unmute it. Good evening. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being here. First, I'll just mention to Josh, if you send me a link to put out word about needed workers and maybe to the other legislators, we have pretty broad reach through, I think, our Facebook pages and such, where we might be able to get some people from around the state to volunteer. The question of counting by hand versus automatic tabulation, and waiting for a close race for a request from a candidate, how about routine tests where we have 100 ballots tabulated through the machine and then verify by hand that that's 100 and do that periodically, whether randomly, and have that happening. That would be not one thing that would, I think, give us some sense of assurance that those hand counts are aligning with those tests. And the second thing is, well, actually two more questions. The last, I'll save the broader one for last, but the second one is, as we were reading the, I'm trying to remember the order regarding elections, the document that John Miller was reading to us. I really like the idea of video cameras on some of these things, and cameras are an investment. I know they can be hacked as well, but we use them for security in buildings and such. And it seems like having cameras focusing on the machines and having someone in a central location that's monitoring, just like you have a security guard watching all the rooms in a building where somebody could be watching those machines. I think that would be a wise investment, and I don't think that takes a statute change to do something like that. And that leads me to my third question: is short of a statute change, anything that's been discussed tonight, such as the cameras and having maybe some test counts, do you have the liberty within the statutes and the regulations to do some of these things to increase security without a statute change?
Yeah, well, Shelley, first of all, to answer your question, and Josh, correct me if I'm not correct, but each machine is tested before it's sent out to the various 441 precincts. I don't know if they run through 100 ballots and then hand count, or if they go through that many, or if they just do 20 or 25. But they are all tested to make sure they're working correctly and properly before they're sent out to the various areas. And then, like I said, they're sealed so that they can't be tampered with.
My suggestion would that they'd be tested at different points, even after the polling places close, and that you have live people there, and it's tabulating with the machine, but then we have live people making sure that it's correct, because that's when it really matters. Because there could be tampering, you're sending it out, you've got it all sealed, and what we're all worried about is something happening in between. So more than just that initial, that they're in good shape when they leave leave the Division of Elections.
So your concern is that they might be tampered once they get set up at the polling place by the election supervisor. Yeah, that could happen. And I guess I don't know about putting up cameras in each location, because again, we have 441 locations, and usually we're either in churches, schools, or town halls, or wherever we can get a spot.
Where there's a will, there's a way, Kevin. I mean, you think of a large building where there's a security officer, and how many cameras? I mean, it can be hundreds, and even in one building. So I think it's a worthy goal going after. And as far as those counts, just as Brian was explaining, the testing period can be programmed one way, but then when you actually have the election, it could be programmed differently. So it's important to have those tests occurring at different points.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, thank you. Josh, did you have anything to add to that? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Next I have Elsie O'Brien. Elsie, if you could unmute there you go.
Okay, am I on?
Hi, this is Lori. He's talking. He's just on my computer.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Lloyd.
Hey, how you doing? Lieutenant Governor, appreciate you listening to all this long and extensive portion. Some of it was rather extensive, drawn out, but there's three key points. I was one of the people that talked with the governor whenever he came and listened to this for the first time. The 3 points are a paper ballot. That's number one. We already have that. I just talked to the governor the other day at the memorial service that we had out here in the valley, and what he said to me was that he had agreed with you that if any candidate had called for a recount, a hand-counted recall, that would be appropriate and acceptable and was not a problem. It only leaves the most important one of everything, and that's a hand count. If you don't have a hand count, we don't have anything. And the people do not trust the situation. And if you'll really do your research, you're going to find out that there's corruption beyond belief through these Diebold machines. They can be programmed. Brian went through it. He's an IT. He's told you that they can be corrupted all the time and easily, even after you've tested them and put them in. And if you'll look at Fraction Magic and look at the long version, you'll see them going in, the people who are the ITs, breaking the locks, getting in and taking the machines out, reprogram them in and bringing them back in so that they will show different votes. I also communicated to the governor, I watched with my own 2 eyes. I saw that whenever they had Roy Moore down there, governor of Alabama, I saw in my own eyes one of the counties down there that you're watching it, and then all of a sudden you see him lose 6,000, is either 4,000 or 6,000 votes. Now, how all of a sudden do you lose 4,000 or 6,000 votes? And that's in one county. We have corruption, and that's how we are in the mess that we are in all across this country, because it's both parties that are in on this stuff and stealing elections. And you have to be really concerned about this, because if you're not, then there's a serious question there in relation to you. And I just don't think that you're completely informed of this. You need to really watch Fraction Magic and take it to heart, because this is over 10 years ago. And we've had this people stealing elections all across the country. It's rampant. It's not just thumping. If you look at the state here in election, we only have 700,000 people in here. A hand count is not that difficult. And if the people have to stay over 1 or 2 hours, you've already told them you're paying a minimum wage. That's nothing. You've spent $4 million on these corrupt machines. I remember watching it in California, and the head of Diebold was on there, and boy, he was a bozo. I mean, he's a complete idiot. And it was going through the corruption that was there. I mean, it was unreal. And we still have the same stuff going on today. Paying a few little people to be able to hand count something is nothing. If we don't have that, we don't have anything at all. And the bottom line is, when the people don't feel that they have justice, that's whenever you begin to run into a real problem. They begin to revolt, and the people either are not voting, but then it'll get to a point to where people will then begin to take action because they're sick and tired of the politicians stealing it and the government not running appropriately. So I'm just saying those things there is injustice that's going on. And concerning the mail-in ballots, that is where some of the most corrupt portion of elections occurs. And I cannot believe the elected officials, the politicians, of how they dealt with this last one and opened it up wide open. Eastman put in 10 amendments to try and protect some way that there be validity to these mail-in ballots. They swore other people. There were over 50 ballots going to one location. And you communicated earlier, and I appreciate that, of saying that by federal law, they have to give them for 4 years. That's an outrage to begin with. But the portion is, those ballots should be coming in. They should be scrutinized a whole lot harder. And for them to send it here, for people to try and vote on this through the mail, it's always the problem. Mail-in ballots are always a huge problem. And here we wanted to throw the doors wide open without any problem at all. This is a serious, serious problem. Elections have been stolen up here, and to think that everything's going to get better, the only thing that's going to change this whole entire thing is a hand count ballot. And it won't cost $4 million worth of machines, and it'll be a little bit of money extra in people's pocket. And if the people knew that it was going to be true, there wouldn't be a problem. No, I'm against mail-in ballots altogether. This is nonsense. This is insanity. And the other thing that you could do is, if anybody saw anything wrong at a precinct or whatever else. There should be a number that they should call, and everything should come to a screeching halt. You know, it's a 1-800 number you call in, and the troopers are there and everything else, and things are shut down until things are squared away. Instead of going, you want to take the vote the next day or whatever. If you have the hand count after you have the election, okay. If it takes 1 hour, if it takes 2 hours, what the heck's the deal? That's not hardly anything at all. I mean, it's chump change. You know, it's nothing. And you don't have to have all you cannot count on computer programs. They have proven it over and over and over. Please, please let our vote count, because at the present time, we have no vote. Please look at Fraction Magic, the long version, and really take it to heart. And I do thank you for being here and enduring all of this. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, no, thank you. And I'm glad we agree on the mail-in ballots. I was getting a little concerned there that was the way y'all were.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, our current system is certainly not perfect, and it's got room for all sorts of improvement, and that's why we have meetings like this.
Huge.
But I do believe it's still better. It's still better than the mail-in ballots.
That's insanity.
Yeah,
insanity.
And
I really do thank you, and I really hope, because you know this has got to change. But otherwise, it's going to get bad, because people are going to finally revolt against it. Because whenever there is injustice, it gets to a point that finally people begin to take things into their hand because of the injustice of judges or legislators or the governing authorities. And finally, they get to the point where we say, we've had it. We're not going to take it anymore. And and our most fundamental of all rights that we have is our vote. And that is definitely being compromised. And it's easily compromised through these voting machines, easily. I recommend spending more time with Brian. Brian be a little bit more teeth than you. So, you know, come on. This is the guy who even invaded one of the videos he has, one of the guys who had the machine there, who was a manufacturer of the voting machines. He says, no, you cannot trust these things. They're not reliable. And they even had a poster. Brian, what was that poster up there? It says, these are unreliable. You can't trust these. And these are the manufacturers of the voting machines. So if that's the case, what the heck? If you're a person who wants to steal elections, then you're going to want that. Stalin said it doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes. And that's what we don't want to get to that point in this country. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol?
Yes.
Are there a lot of people that still have questions?
I see 3 hands up, and there's a 4th person that I want to give time to.
Okay, I was just going to suggest maybe if we keep our questions kind of short, so that everybody would have a chance to ask a question.
The next person is Carolyn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'd like to thank everybody, especially Lieutenant Governor, for being here. I know this is probably not the way most people want to spend their evening, but it's good that we are all here. This is a really critical thing. Elections are the absolute foundation of our system. And if we can't trust them, we have nothing. Real quick, I can only say voting by mail is just worse than any nightmare we can imagine. Our daughter has lived in Anchorage for years and years. She's been there since they started that. She has always kept up her address change. She has her PFD. Everything is right down the line. She has yet to receive a ballot in the mail. One of her friends, on the other hand, has on numerous occasions received numerous ballots. It just does not work. It is absolutely, in a big, bold headline, corruption starts here. That has to stop. I don't care the reason. It has to stop. If we can put on a mask and we can walk in and social distance and go to Walmart, we can go to the polls. It has to happen. As far as finding workers, there are lots of social clubs, women's political clubs that I'm sure would be willing to work with the Division of Elections in having people come to their membership and train them. I don't know if that is something that can be done, but I guarantee the clubs I'm in, let's do it. Let's get the folks out there. Let's get our people trained and then put them to work. I just think those are two really important things. If you look at how the money is spent, you get what you pay for. And if you want to pay for machines that are easily corruptible, you're going to pay for that in the long run. Spend your money on doing the hand counts. Spend your money on the paper ballots. Maybe in some areas it will cost you a little more, but where are your priorities? Having to pay a little bit more to have a hand count, or paying a little bit more to make sure your election is as pristine as it can possibly be? So that's my comments. That's it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and we're thinking along the same lines. We're going to be doing some social media and becoming a little more aggressive in getting people to work or to adopt a precinct. You know, I know PTAs are always looking for ways to earn money, and so what we're thinking and hoping is that some of the PTAs will agree to adopt that precinct at their school, and they'll work that election that day after we train them, of course. But yeah, if there's other groups or organizations, social clubs, you know, we're like I said, we always call and this may not be the right thing to do, but we always call people who worked in the past that you know show that they that we can trust them, and only half this year have said they want to come back. So we and again, it's because of the virus primarily.
Jesse?
Right. So in the vein of mail-in voting, everyone I hope is aware that the Matsuburg Borough has an ordinance tomorrow night that would direct the clerk's office to do a hybrid mail-in voting election. So what they would do is they would mail a absentee ballot to every single registered voter in the Matsu Borough, and then they would have early voting at the borough building and one other location, early in-person absentee only, no precinct voting. So I would encourage everybody to call in tomorrow. The meeting begins at 6 and testify. There's a number of issues that I could foresee with running an election like that. For one thing, that many unsolicited ballots, well, you'll find quite a few of them at the post office in the trash can. If somebody did want to cheat, it would not be particularly hard to attack it from that direction. Also, you know, there will be a number of dead people and people that have moved and all that will be receiving ballots. So just from a general security perspective, it certainly does not enhance election security, and I would argue it should definitely be avoided. I don't see that we can't do a regular election this year. So.
You know, those are great comments, and again, we have nothing to do with your local election, so you're right. You need to get involved, and they need to hear from you. And I've had people say, "Hey, well, you already do mail-in vote by mail because you got the absentee process," but there's a difference. You have to request an absentee ballot. So when we send out a ballot, we know it's going to someone who actually wants to vote, versus just sending it to everybody, knowing that only 30% of people want those ballots. And you're absolutely right. The rest are just going to be laying around and be a big temptation, because I think you all know elections are very emotional and very cutthroat at times. And even though the candidates may not cheat, sometimes the workers themselves, the election campaign workers themselves, get so into the campaign that they'll do almost anything. So let's not tempt them or tempt anyone by having a whole bunch of ballots laying around.
Okay, thank you. Next I see Matt.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on, but there we go. Lieutenant Governor Meyer, I really admire you for putting yourself out there like this, and thank you for the opportunity to say something that hasn't been brought up that I think is one of the biggest holes in the election process. And perhaps some of the legislators have addressed this already. I don't know. But when I was involved, there was a statute that allowed ballots to be destroyed on the precinct level. And one of the issues, we had in 2010 with the write-in was, there was a number of precincts across the board, both rural and urban, where there were numerous ballots, anywhere from dozens to hundreds, written out in the same hand. And so we audited we got access to the voter logs and made sure the numbers of ballots in the voter logs in the different precincts matched the number of ballots cast. But what can't be accounted, the way I accounted for this is basically any two election workers that are left alone with the ballots, if they agreed on a certain candidate, and some of the precincts only had 2 election workers, there's supposed to be 3, I think, according to regulation. But all you have to do is take 2, you could take a couple ballots, or it could be a couple dozen or a couple hundred ballots that are left over, extra ballots. So if there's 1,000 ballots sent to a precinct and 500 people vote, there's 500 extra ballots. And you fill out the ballots for one candidate and take the ballots from the other candidate, shred them, and then shred all the extra ballots, and nobody's ever going to be any the wiser. So I think that statute needs to be changed, and the unused ballots, the damaged ballots, all of the ballots that are issued to any given precinct should go back to central headquarters for a central audit. So all of the ballots can be accounted for. And I think that would go a long ways towards helping with election integrity as well. And an independent audit of the whole election would be really nice too, but I know that costs a lot of money. So I have a whole bunch of issues with the system that I came across through actually dealing with it. So, but I don't want to take your time, but to me, that's one of the biggest issues that I saw that I think is egregious, because it has nothing to do with the write-in process. It has to do with the regular process. This can happen anywhere as long as the ballots can be destroyed at the precinct level. And you can ensure, even though the voter log, the number of voters on the voter log that signed and the number of ballots cast match, there's nothing to stop anybody from, all it takes is a couple people agreeing to do this. And then one more thing. Number one, I'd like you to address whether that statute has been addressed. I forgot the other thing I was going to address, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know we like I mentioned, we spent a lot of time with Senator Schauer and some time as well with Representative Eastman and Josh. You got to help me out on this. I think we are changing the process because of the feedback we received from your representative and your senator, and all unused ballots will go back to central headquarters to be destroyed. But we were able to do that, I believe, through regulations, or maybe didn't even have to change regulations. It's a process. But Josh, can you help me out on that?
Yeah, that's correct, Matt. We worked with Scott Ogan and Terrence with Senator Schauer's office, and once it became clear that his bill wasn't going anywhere, we tried to break out the pieces to do those things that we could do that didn't require the statute change, and that was one of them. And so
They-
we changed that process so that those ballots will no longer be destroyed at the precinct level.
They should be preserved though, as long as all the rest of the ballots are preserved too. So the possibility of audit is there that is foolproof.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Matt. The next hand I see raised is John Nelson.
Hey, thank you all for putting on this presentation. Joe Miller, thank you very much for your presentation. It was impeccable. And Brian Endel, I'll tell you what, the testimony given is just incredible. Lieutenant Governor, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this is a picture of the actual election pamphlets that I received in 2018, and there's 7 of them, one of which I actually picked up in person. My wife would have picked one up, which would have meant that we would have gotten 8 of them. And we actually relocated in about that same time in 2017, 2018. And between our post office box and our physical address, we received 6 additional election guides, which means that we would have gotten 6 additional ballots that could have been manipulated to any degree. Now, I'm a financial advisor, and I am held to a higher standard than our elected officials. And accountability is the ability to count. And we have to have accountability with our election process. Without such, we are leaving ourselves open to fraud. And I'll just leave it at that I am absolutely for voter ID. We give our ID when we go present our checks, go and present any other transaction that we are requested to transact, whether it be alcohol or whether it be signing a check or presenting a debit card with CID. And that CID means that we are there testifying that we are there in person, and therefore I would encourage that we use that for our election process as well. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, John. I believe they are required to show ID unless the poll worker knows that person personally. That's not being done. Like we need to know about it.
Okay, thank you, John. The next hand I see up is Holly Sheldon Lee, and I think someone's going to speak for her.
Hello, this is Sharon again.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, yes, I'll read her message from the screen here. It's a small group of concerned Alaska citizens and registered Republican voters want to physically look at the voting machines in South Central Alaska, Fairbanks, Kenai, and Juneau, which would take about 30 minutes at each location. We have not been granted access when we have requested it. Since you hold authority over elections, will you please authorize us to visit? Hold on a second. To visit each location in June and July to look at the machines' make, model, and serial numbers. That's it.
They want. She would like to look at all 441 machines, I guess, and certainly, you know, we're okay with people looking at machines, inspecting machines. I mean, they're new. That's a lot of machines to look at. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just can't commit to.
I think she's only asking for one machine to be looked at the different places.
Well, I thought she wanted to take down the serial number. And
I may not be 100%, but what we were trying to do before, and I was part of this because I was actually making phone calls. We wanted to be able to view a machine. Just we couldn't do that.
Back.
So that would be a start, like in the Wasilla area.
Okay. Well, let me check with the supervisor there in Wasilla. I again, unless the timing doesn't work, you know, because they are getting geared up and getting busy and doing training. But I don't see any reason why you can't look at the machines that she has there that she's getting ready to deploy here in a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a really 30-second deal. Go in, look at it, verify, maybe the serial number, take a picture of it. The whole idea is to actually look and see what machine it actually is, to verify what you say and the actual machine we're looking at, they exist, and then from then we can know more about that machine, do research on it or whatever. But without being able to even see the machine, that kind of makes it impossible.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you can't see the machine, and we can give you the name, make, and model of the machines.
We were denied already, Lieutenant Governor, and the emails are in your office there. So I reviewed those.
I just want to interject, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. But Brian, good people going in and seeing the serial number doesn't bother me. But once we grant access to some people, what if there's some not so good people that want to see those serial numbers, Brian? Could they, if with that information, could they start preparing things to hack them? That would be my concern.
No, that wouldn't be a concern.
Okay. I didn't know. I'm not the technical person. I just was concerned about that.
Mr. Appleby might be able to comment on it, but from my standpoint, no, because I'm just looking at the machine. I just want to verify, hey, you got model X of, such and such, and then I can look it up on the internet and see how does that machine actually work? Does it, do we actually get a paper ballot out of it? Is that one of the options? How does the optical scanner work? Does it produce a QR code or does it not produce a QR code? These are the types of questions I'm looking to answer. And they're specifically geared towards, do we have safe elections? And what are the vulnerabilities of these machines? Knowing what machine you have, at some point in time, everybody's going to find out anyway. But we're looking to see what our vulnerabilities are. That's all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, your request seems harmless enough, but I think Shelley brings up a good point too, is that the election supervisors don't know you from a bad guy, and so we have to be suspicious, and we have to protect the integrity of those machines. But Shelley's right that if we do look at them, then we got to let anybody else who wants to. The election supervisors are so busy showing the machines and keeping an eye on you, making sure you're not manipulating them, that they're not doing their job. So I just, before I commit to that, I just need to check with the supervisors and see what issues. But certainly we can get you the make and the model pictures. And I know we're going to be doing some demonstration.
Okay, thank you. Next I see Rick Whitbeck.
I'll make this really quick. Let me go off video here. My plan was to work the two elections in August and November as a precinct supervisor. When I talked with Pat here in the Anchorage office today and told her because of my medical situation, I wasn't going to be able to do it, she said they were 3/4 of the precincts in Anchorage short of
this one
people to work those. So, as we continue to talk and I see all the comments here about, well, we have all these people who could work this, we're not afraid of going to work this. I would tell you, if we don't work this, the Dems will work this and the Dems will chair those precincts. If you can't chair it, at least work it. It's a 14-hour day though, but it's everybody's part. I just can't do it. There's no way with my double PE in my lungs to work a 14-hour day. So, but we need them. And Lieutenant Governor, tell me if I'm wrong, but Pat's comment was we needed about 3/4 of the precincts in Anchorage are without a chairperson right now for those two elections.
Yeah, Rick, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. That was some pretty serious stuff that you had there with the blood clot. But no, you're absolutely right. Surprisingly, our biggest shortage of election workers are here in Anchorage, and we're short in the valley as well. Though the rural areas, we believe it or not, is we're doing pretty good. So it's the road system, and that you would think just the opposite. And I know some folks are getting unemployment, and they're afraid that They'll lose that if they work a couple days, but that's not the case. So that if somebody says that, that's just not the case at all. You'll still get your unemployment, and plus you'll get whatever you get being an election worker. So yes, we definitely need more people, especially here in Anchorage.
Okay, thank you. The next hand I see up is Edna.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to tag on with Senator Hughes is concerned because what is the request from the public? I mean, if we have 3 people going in, taking serial numbers, this kind of stuff, then if somebody sees that or hears that, then they can make a public information request to the Lieutenant Governor's office wanting to know what was released, and then it's feathers in the sky from a pillow because you don't have any idea. So I am concerned. I can understand why Brian, knows very much about the IT, to be able to do that, but I think there's more risk than what we're thinking about.
And thank you for that comment, and I think so too. That's why I'm reluctant to say yes without checking with them. I'm sure there's some very good reasons why they are concerned about just letting people come in and write down serial numbers. But again, no problem giving you the make, the model of the machine itself, so that you know what we bought, what we have, what we're going to be using.
Okay, thank you. The next hand I see up is Tom Brond.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Tom.
Can you see me? I don't know how to get that working. I can't see me.
That doesn't matter. Go ahead and ask your question, Tom.
I got a number of things that I'm thinking about as I hear all you people come up with these great ideas. Lieutenant Governor, who do we make a suggestion to or volunteer? How do we do that? I have no idea where to go.
Well, that's it. I know the answer to that one. That's on our website. It's a Division of Elections website, and then there'll be a headline that says election workers, and there's a real short application that we hope to get online here by the end of this week, early next week. But even if it's not online, you can print it out, fill it out. It's basically just your name and address and a phone number, and then just fax that in the Division of Elections, and I can assure you they'll be getting a hold of you.
Okay, I have a number of issues with communications out of here. Email's not working, and my fax is in the basement, and I can't really get there because I'm broken. But if I've got suggestions on this, who do I suggest them to?
Suggestions on campaign or on election workers?
No, on all these machines and the counting, because that man that was on earlier, he was correct. Stalin said it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts. And I've got a lot of suggestions here, a lot of things that I have a little bit of experience with, but more people would vote in this state if they were sure that the system had integrity. Because I've talked to people all the time and they don't vote because they don't trust their vote to count. And I keep encouraging to vote anyway, because it'll get fixed eventually. That's a couple of things. When I get a pamphlet, which is rare because I don't get them very often, when I go to the polls, it's different than the pamphlet. And I'm shocked when I see it. So I got to kind of guess while I'm there. I think we should change the deadline for certification so that it gives time not only to report some numbers, but then when a hand count comes in, the certification should come after everything is certified, that you're sure, you're certain that it's right. And that probably means a law change. I had the same problem as Jim Pezent at one polling place down here in Palmer. I wanted to watch the count and they wouldn't let me. Oh, well, we only have 3 people, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, and somebody else. I think it ought to be public, and putting that online so people can actually watch the counts in their area, I think would help. I don't know what the complications are in that, but I think it ought to be broadcast. One thing I'm thinking about is when the votes are counted, if there's a question about the voting being counted in one area, why not take those paper ballots and run them through 7 different machines and see what the vote comes out to be, to see if one of these machines is awry. That's one thing. I watched a testimony of a man testifying to Congress who was a computer programmer, and he was there explaining to them how you can make a program that they can somehow get into the voting machine. I have no idea how that's done, but it turns itself on after the machine's in there, and you can't see it when you examine the machine. You just can't tell unless you got somebody really good that knows what this program could look like. It turns itself on, the voting gets done all day long, and just before it's time to close the voting, this program shuts itself off, then self-destructs, and you can't even find a trace of it. So the hand ballot is the only way to do it, the paper ballot. I don't have any problem with running through the machines, but before it's certified, I think they all ought to be counted. And I think it's worth the money for people to get the integrity that they're looking for in the counts. I think that's enough for now. But
oops.
I was just going to say, I don't know how many more questions you have, Carol, but it sounds pretty unanimous, and I agree from just my own interest that we'll do a hand count at the end of the election. So, and hopefully, yeah, the numbers all match and everybody's happy, and then we have trust and integrity in our election system again.
I have only 2 hands up, and I can say nobody after that if you wish, but I do have one person who's asked to go last.
Okay.
In addition to that.
Yeah, if that's okay with the group. 2 more questions.
Okay, my next hand is David Eastman.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I just wanted to echo what Rick had said a few moments back about he had signed up to work some of the election booths and whatnot. I've done that as well. In fact, I was doing that every year until I was a candidate, and then they stopped letting me do it, which is probably a good thing. But it's not as hard as you might think. Especially if you don't mind, meeting new people. Y'all just get to meet new people, and it's generally a fun time. I was, doing Matt Clayman's district down in Sand Lake Elementary one year, and we had a great time. So if you know anybody, especially folks that are hurting for money, it's not a bad deal, and it's not a bad experience either.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks, David.
And the last one is Boyd McPhail.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I really don't have a question. I do have a comment. And my comment is, one of the things I've heard consistently through this whole process is from the Lieutenant Governor about how much it costs. Well, I am making a comment now to all the legislators that are here. I don't care what your damn budget priorities and stuff are. And I don't think anybody else here cares what your budget priorities are. But you better damn well make sure that there is enough money for the Division of Election and the Lieutenant Governor to make sure that he can do hand counts, recounts, or any other counts that are necessary to hold this election. That's not on him to get his money to do that. If he can't, it's up to you to give him the money. And if you don't give him the money, he can't do his job. He can't do his job, well, then we're still in this bind where we cannot trust our elections. And that lays right at your feet. Remember this, it lays at your feet. And there will be people who will not come after the lieutenant governor or the governor or the division of election. They'll be coming for you because it is your responsibility as a political figure and as the controller of the purse strings to ensure that our elections are fair and trustworthy. It's his job to do that, but it's your job to make sure that he can do that. So with that said, I'm sorry, but I'm a little torqued about this, but it lays it at your feet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Boyd. The last speaker is Joe Miller.
Lieutenant Governor, I want to thank you for being part of this meeting. It took some cojones to be on, and you may actually regret it after a few of my comments in closing, but I want to just first mention that all of these issues resolve by guaranteeing at the precinct level a hand count. It costs no money. It's only upon the demand of a party or candidate representative. It's part of that executive order. Obviously, probably the most, I wouldn't say obviously, but from my perspective, one of the most important parts of it, that you have the right to validate the machine based upon a hand count at the precinct level. Used to happen all the time. That's what the state used to do. And it's something that can happen at no cost. And it's just simply on the demand of the observers that are there at the precinct level. And it doesn't take a lot of time. All these issues about security over the Diebold machines, the serial numbers, the seals, et cetera, they all go away if at the precinct level you have the right of the hand count. So I'm hoping when you're telling us, Lieutenant Governor, that you are going forward with the hand count by regulation, that you're allowing that at the precinct level.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, do you have any more remarks to make?
No, I mean, this has been very educational, and I appreciate the feedback. And I will say for your representatives and your senators, they are supportive of elections. And this year's just going to be a weird year with the coronavirus, and I think we are going to have plenty of money. I think that we're slated to get some federal money. Again, that can only be used on COVID-related material. I mean, all the PPE we're going to have to buy, the gloves, the masks, the hand sanitizer, et cetera, et cetera. I think the federal government is going to give us plenty of money to cover that. And so we should have, again, and the governor certainly supports you and supports me in coming up with, like I said, approximately $100,000 to do the statewide hand count. You know, Joe, I'll give it thought on the precinct level. Sometimes we like to keep those ballots secured, and so we don't want them pulled out of the boxes at the end of the election. And as you all know, you all want the results to be shown as quickly as possible.
But Lieutenant Governor, I want to just mention one thing about that, because what we experienced during at least one of our elections was that those machines were actually in the possession of a close confidant of my opponent in the Fairbanks area. And part of the concern here, and this is the point that you probably don't want to hear, but there was a degree of bias that has been demonstrated in the Division of Elections. In fact, the 2010 race itself, headed up by Gelfenumai, I mean, it was by many pundits across the United States, it was seen as the laughing stock of the country. And yet you, in December of 2018, reappointed Gelfenumai to the head of the Division of Elections. So when we're talking about securing these machines and making sure the seals are intact and relying on your team, we have the same person in charge that we had all these problems come out of in 2010. Now, in Gail's defense, I mean, all of this is not her fault. A lot of it has to do with institutional issues, but it doesn't enhance confidence in the system when you've restored at the head of the Division of Elections an individual that oversaw many of the problems that we're talking about today. And so that's why I'm saying, if you want to restore confidence, allow at the precinct level, upon the demand of an observer, look at that executive order for guidance on your regulation. It is an easy way to restore confidence that decentralizes this whole effort of, okay, we got the Division of Elections in charge of the machines. Instead, we have people, and it's observed. I mean, you've already got, maybe 2 people in each precinct level at sometimes controlling those ballots. Here, at least, upon the demand of an observer, party, candidate observer, it's seen, it's reviewed. You still have the electronic ticker tape going into the Division of Elections, but they have the right to count those ballots as historically was done years ago in Alaska. And that alone restores some confidence. And it's easy, it's cheap, and the tight budgetary times. It seems to me that if we're really interested in returning integrity to Alaska, that's an easy, cheap way to do it.
Okay, well, I don't disagree with you at all on that, Joe. And again, Gail's defense, I think she followed statute in making the determination that she made 10 years ago. And I know it's all been fully litigated in court. Now, I don't disagree with you that I don't necessarily think our judges are unbiased, but that's the system that we currently live in. Became highly recommended by Governor Parnell and Lieutenant Governor Treadwell, who both of them were in office at the time this all occurred in 2010. Again, my biggest concern right now is that the method that we use is very labor intensive. We have a manpower shortage, and if somebody has already worked 14 hours, it's going to be difficult to get them to stay another couple hours to do a hand count. And then again, do you really want them to do a hand count after a 14-hour day? So if we get plenty of manpower, then we can do this. But right now, as some of you noted, we have shortages, and those shortages are real.
If you're talking about the voting machines, you got to get rid of them. They're absolutely ridiculous. The paper ballots with the counter is fine, but the voting machines have to go. They're hard to set up. People don't know how to use them. They take too much time.
We need to rustle up the troops, get involved, sign up to be a poll watcher. I really appreciate a lot of the comments that people made. There's some really good suggestions. Again, this was recorded, so it can be viewed later, or it can be shared with people that that weren't able to make it and that are interested. I'm just amazed that people really stuck through this whole presentation. It was excellent. I just want to thank you all for participating, and it just shows the level of concern that we have. It's reassuring to me that people really, really want to get involved in the government and see our elected officials do the right thing, and that we can bring some honesty and truth into our election process. So without any other comments or anything, I just want to thank you all again, and get involved. Get involved. We can turn this ship around if we get involved. So thank you very much. Good night, and God bless you all.
Good night, everybody.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Good night.
you.
Good
Good night.